they're the biggest shock of this winter when it comes to being in the final three for Sasaki. There's no way I would have guessed Toronto, but
Here we go. Jim Duquette joining us right now. You can hear him on SiriusXM, SNY, many other spots too. Duke, great to see you, man. How's the off season?
what's up, guys? How we doing? Everything is good. A little too cold here for my liking in Maryland. I think I need to go south.
Just a
I'll
warning.
come down here.
It's a little chilly today
It's
though.
cold down
It's
here.
not.
It's cold. Are you kidding? What is it? 60? It's cold
Yeah,
down
it's
here. If you
cold.
see me, listen. If you see me on set in a long sleeve shirt and a
Both of
hoodie,
us. Yeah.
that means it's under 70 degrees in Florida.
Exactly. All right. So Duke, you popped up about a week ago with the report about Pete Alonso, and then we're like, we got to get Duke on. We'll ask you about other stuff too, but I want to start there.
Yeah.
You reported on it, and it's not like suddenly a deal happens 5 seconds later. Why do you think the Mets have not accepted Pete's offer to come back for 3 years with the opt-outs?
I think primarily on this one, it's been a stare down. It seems, it feels like with the Mets and Pete, just because there's some uncertainty that there aren't a lot of suitors for him right now. Right, a lot of the first base options are closed. Right, we saw Goldschmidt and Walker and Josh Naylor, and we've seen a lot of that kind of those teams that needed that quality first baseman. They went in different directions, and so. Um, I think with that, and I think that obviously Pete knowing the Mets and Mets knowing Pete, I mean that would be the ideal fit. I always felt like I'd be really surprised that Pete wasn't back with them, but when you start to see the market go in that direction, I think David Stearns is one of the bright president of baseball operations in the game, and he realizes he doesn't have to bid against himself right now. There aren't a lot of other suitors that it would seem Pete wants to play for. I think we saw the Angels are interested potentially. That's a tough place to go right now because they don't have a chance to win, and I don't know if they would give him the kind of money he's looking for. So, I think that was the impetus of the Boris Corp going back to the Mets saying, "Listen, we'll make this offer to you guys 3 years. We'll do the opt outs and everything else." And as David Stearns, I think even Steve Cohen eventually may have to jump in on this one. They weren't there at the time, and so now it's okay. What does that number look like? What's the AAV look like? I think it should end up being north of Bellinger. I'd be surprised if it's not, but I can understand from the Mets side they think it might need to be closer to Christian Walker, and what his AAV was last, with the Astros, based off of the year that Christian had versus what Pete had in this platform year, the 2024 season. So, it's there's more nuance. Obviously, you guys all know that, but I think that's why it's been held up at this point still, and until. I think Steve Cohen will have to jump in on this, or maybe David Stearns will go to that number. Which, if I were in his shoes, I would do, because of the fact that they were willing to offer him, 150 million back in the spring or before the season started this past year.
Different books now, though, with Soto on there. So now Pete's number starts to look a little chunky on the taxes that they have to pay back. Not that they don't want him back, but just throwing that out there where, you see the Yankees do the stretched out longer deals. So they don't have to pay as much with the average annual value. But I want to ask you about your former GM hat. So how often do players in their representation make offers / ideas towards a front office? Isn't it usually the reverse? And also, from your perspective, if you were another GM and you saw this report, wouldn't you be like, well, I don't think I'm going to call him because I don't think he wants to be here?
Yeah, I think those are all valid. Usually, it doesn't come from the player. I'd say 99% of them come from the team, right? You're usually having to sell your team and show the level of interest to the player. In this particular case, I think obviously there's some method to behind what Boris Corp decided to do in this. If you offer that 3-year deal out there on the marketplace, there might be other teams that would jump in on that. I mean, you look at Tampa, who usually doesn't spend any money. They need offense. The shorter term deals are usually better obviously for them. Seattle, all of a sudden their owner might wake up and say, okay, let you spend some money, not just for Donovan Solano, but for Pete, for more money for Pete. Like there's multiple areas that if you made this known out there that, that's, or made it known to the general managers, not publicly, that this was available at other teams, that I think presumably teams would jump in at that level. So I think he might have to some degree boxed himself in, right, to just the Mets. But I don't know. You guys know this. I'm sure AJ or Eric, from a player perspective, like, all right, your main goal is to go to the Mets, but if the Mets aren't going to go to that number, would that preclude you from, asking for 3 years or more from someone else? I think from the team perspective, I'd love to have Pete Alonso. I want that. I'd take him on whatever deal I could get, even if he said he wanted a 1 year deal. I would, forego any hurt feelings to get him in my lineup. But, I think Pete would be willing to do that, obviously. But I don't know. That's my thought on this. Is I don't think he's going to exclude any teams if the Mets decide to not go down to this level. But I cannot imagine that the Mets wouldn't try to work out this deal. This is too good to be true, I feel like.
Jim, would Pete only accept a short-term deal from the Mets, though? Right? I know you're saying,
Right now.
he went to the Mets.
Yeah.
Right now, right? Okay, so let's say he does do this. Where do you see him ending up? Do you see him back at the Mets, or do you see another team? Because right now, if you ask I don't see another team out there. Yes, the Rays are nice thought. The Mariners are nice thought. But if I'm Pete Alonso, I don't want to go to Seattle. Right-handed hitters go there to die, according to everybody, right? Maybe San Francisco, but no one hits home runs in San Francisco. Tampa Bay, I know he's from Tampa. Maybe that's a drawing card for him. But what else is out there? The Nats, I thought, were an option. They went out and got low, right? Walker obviously made his move, right? Goldschmidt to the Yankees. A lot of the first baseman carousel, Naylor to the D-backs, right? A lot of the first baseman carousel is already kind of stopped, and he's kind of the only place that fits now is the Mets. So maybe David Stearns is playing this kind of right and is like, he came with us 3-year deal. Maybe he'll come to us with a 2-year deal or a 1-year deal, and then we can try again. But I don't know. I just don't see another fit for him other than the Mets.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think, there was a hope, I think, from Pete's camp that Boston was going to be interested, especially if they traded Casas, their young, left-handed hitter, power guy in a pitching deal, right, for Castillo or somebody else. That was the rumor that was out there for the longest time. And he'd be a good fit, obviously, at Fenway. But I don't think that's a possibility right now, too, especially with Yoshida there, as mostly a DH. I know they said he's going to play the field more, but it's easier said than done on that part. So I think he's primarily their DH next year. So I don't think Boston's a fit either. The hard part too with Pete is, like you're saying, like, okay, the Giants would be a potential destination spot, would change their lineup around and make them more competitive. Is that a place though you want to go on a 1-year deal where you think you can put up your best offensive numbers? And that's a tough hitter's park, as we know too. So yeah, I still think. And listen, Pete would probably, his power would play in any of those parts, right? He's kind of proven that over his career. Still, he still had to put up good numbers to go out and get the bigger contract, which is what he's trying to do and isn't getting this year. San Francisco, Seattle, those are tough places to go. So I'm with you on this. I feel like it's Mets or bust, best fit. Here's the thing: you go back to see. And this is why, if I'm David Stearns, I'm not sitting there too long on this. It maybe, playing chicken a little longer is fine, and you can do that. But again, as I said, some team may decide to wake up and offer him that type of deal, and Scott might just say, you know what, we're sick of sitting around. But Pete's put up numbers at Citi Field in that division. A couple of years ago we saw that, right, in 22 or 23, I think it was. And now what is he going to do with Soto in that lineup too, and in the whole, I think, overall lineup? He doesn't. Last year I thought he really pressed on occasion to, he's going into his free agent year, no doubt, but also secondly, or B, he felt like at times he had to be the guy. That turned out to not be the case because Vientos, came into his own and Lindor had the unbelievable year, but. Now he can go in a much different mindset, relaxed mindset, not having to worry about being the guy because you got Soto there and all the attention on him. I think Pete's going to have a huge year if he goes back to the Mets. So I still think that the destination spot is there, and that's why I find it hard to believe that it just isn't. That won't get done for 3 years with the opt outs. To me, it's that offer. The Mets, I think, really have to take it.
Is David Stearns' style that he's clearly brought over from Milwaukee going to ultimately get him hurt in New York? Because you see him staying away from any of the big time starters. You see him staying away from, obviously they signed Soto. That's off the table here. That's completely different. But is his style going to get him hurt in New York?
It's a great question because it's, that showing restraint, that's not what the Met fans or New York fans want to see or hear. Like they don't care about saving money, and I think that's the thing I appreciate about Steve Cohen, their owner, is he's all about winning, and he'll spend whatever it takes to win. And I think that dynamic though with David's there, obviously to bring what he had over in Milwaukee. Kretzy, well, you saw it over there too. But it should be the best of both worlds. It's kind of the conversation that we had when Andrew Friedman went from Tampa to LA. We're like, oh, is that mindset gonna stick that he had in Tampa with the Dodgers? And you know what? He adapted, and now he's spending obscene amounts of money. Right? They were number one in spending last year in free agent market, number two this year so far. And I think that David, maybe he won't spend to that degree, but there'll be that kind of push and pull that you like to have in the front office. The push would be from the owner. Not many owners are out there willing to do that. And I think Steve Cohen and that's a really interesting fit, a good fit. That if David is showing too much restraint, then Steve Cohen will nudge him along a little bit. So that. I don't know that for sure, but that's the way that relationship and dynamic kind of evolved over the last year or so. I think, and I'll give you a quick example. Like in the beginning of the season last year, when the Mets were off to such a bad start, there was starting to be a little concern or panic at the ownership level that they should maybe make some changes. And David Stearns kind of steadied here and said, "Hey, we need to be patient here. We're only in the month of May. Let's let this team settle in a little bit. There have been some injuries." And so, I think that's an interesting dynamic that maybe didn't get mentioned all that much last year. But that's the value that David has too, is that experience there. So, in the end, I think it's going to end up being a really good relationship between those two guys. And I think David will find, maybe not on the pitching front early on, but I think that philosophy will have to change. You're going to have at least some certainty in the rotation, in the future. So, we'll see if he decides to go that way. But I think he's going to have to.
We've talked ad nauseum about Roki Sasaki, but I'd be remiss to not ask you this question. So what would you say Toronto said in their two meetings, because they had a meeting in LA and a meeting in Toronto, that would make Roki Sasaki say, okay, what could you, if you were the GM, what did you tell him while you're in Toronto? Because he didn't even go down. I talked to somebody that was in the meetings. He didn't even go down to Dunedin to look at their facility. He did love their facility up in Toronto, but I mean, they're pulling rabbits out of a hat if they're still in this.
I agree. They're the biggest shock of this winter when it comes to being in the final three for Sasaki. There's no way I would have guessed Toronto, but he is coming in there, as you guys know, with the lower signing bonuses. That's well documented. And if you want to try to market a player and get, and generate revenues off of a high profile guy, you have the whole country of Canada. That to me would be the selling point. In addition to some, they've done a good job pitching development wise at the major league level with Pete Walker and others. So, I think from that perspective, if I was in the Toronto's front office's shoes, I'd be pushing, some of the things along those lines. Obviously the city, cosmopolitan, city. The area is beautiful. Toronto is a great place to play, and you can make a ton of money in endorsements throughout the country. It wouldn't surprise me if they had some of those businesses involved in the presentation. Those are things that I would at least try to pursue too. So, I think there might be a financial component here, and we'll find out, I'm sure, afterwards especially if they get him. But I wouldn't be surprised if that was a big part of their presentation.
That's smart. That's like the NIL. Like, hey, we've got these
Mm-hmm.
side deals that are not technically legal, but you could get endorsements if you're in Canada. What's the
Mhm.
big spot? Hortons? Tim Hortons?
Hortons, yeah.
Tim
Want to sell some
Hortons.
donuts, Roki? Donuts and coffee. Duke, thank you. Appreciate you stopping
All
by.
right,
Good to
guys.
see you, man. Good to catch up.
Good to see you guys. All right, talk soon. Bye.
Appreciate you.
Hey, everybody. Be sure to like and subscribe for more content.
We're back here every weekday, all year long, so do not miss an episode.
The videos are coming in all day. Here's another video you might enjoy.
Baseball the way it should be covered.